Is that drumming or dancing or a hybrid or what is this?
It's dancing. It's dancing. It's my hybrid. That's perfect. It's a hybrid.
Okay. It's a hybrid.
I just enjoy a little great piano music, jazz, and so we get our Friday going and introing around the horn. It just makes me feel good.
Okay. All right.
Makes me feel good. So you need more music in your life, Tom.
I guess so. Yeah.
There's more to life than 80s on satellite, 80s radio on satellite TV. You got to mix it up more. So,
okay. All right.
Satellite radio, I should say. So, anyways, how are you, my friend?
Doing good.
Very good. Your week's been all right?
Been good.
You've been busy.
Yeah. Been good.
Very good. Well, let's dive on in. My name's Kevin Brown. I'm here with my lifelong friend and business partner, Tom Burton. We get together every Friday morning here on Around the Horn and Wholesale Distribution and Manufacturing. We try and pull together the news of the week, mostly North American news, a little bit of international news as well as it impacts wholesale distribution and manufacturing. And we put that together in a newsletter by the same title. That newsletter goes out to about 10,000 plus people each week. And we unpack that news here on our live stream and our podcast. So we're here this morning. You might be listening to us on or watching with us on LinkedIn Live, could be Facebook Live or YouTube Live. But if you're listening, that would be on one of the podcast formats. Our great producer and editor, John Taylor, pulls all this together later in the day for us to get it up on Apple and Spotify and Odyssey and all the top podcast platforms. So if you're listening in, though, you would not be seeing the newsletter. And we're going to be posting that newsletter here that we walk through each day. So if you would like to get the newsletter, as so many do, just send us a note. You can do that at hello@leadsmarttech.com and hello again at leadsmarttech.com. And then you could also go to the website that we have for our live show and podcast, which is www.aroundthehornpod.com. We're able to be here every week because the company that Tom and I work for, LeadSmart Technologies, covers the costs of all of this and sponsors the show. LeadSmart is a AI-enabled CRM and customer intelligence solution that's been built specifically for wholesale distributions and manufacturers. We have versions for both to help accelerate growth. And the reason it does that is because it gives never before seen insights into customers and what you're doing with your customers. What are you selling? Are you selling the right products? What should you be selling? What's going on with your quotes? And we use AI tools with that to get a look at that data that's coming from ERP systems and marketing automation and e-commerce. So if you ever have an interest in learning more about that, please reach out to us as well. Tom, before we dive in, I looked at just some of the invites that go out. The folks that have clicked that they're coming invite to the show each week, I think typically represents somewhere between 5 and 10% of the people that come on live that have clicked an invitation that they've received. But I saw, I think 3 or 4 different countries people are coming from today. So if you're listening in, whether you're in, Paducah or you're in Miami or you're in another country, let us know where you're from and let us know that you're here. If you're listening in while you're eating lunch or whatever between bites, throw a little comment in as well, because it gets a little spicier and a little more fun when we hear from you.
Yeah, hopefully that works. We've had weirdness this week on that with LinkedIn, so hopefully that's
yeah, you were on another podcast earlier in the week,
so that's good. All right, good morning, Brian.
There we go. Well, we can start the show because Hoppy's here.
Yeah.
So very, very good. Yeah, another podcast that you were on, you guys were celebrating a milestone and earlier in the week, and that I was trying to comment and trying to be supportive because I can't make it to that podcast very often because somebody has to drive the ship while you're there, and
Sure.
you couldn't see my comments. So
no, a lot of them. But anyway, looks like we're good. We're on our way, Brian, in the Queen City from Charlotte. So
that's right.
Welcome. And
Duncan, I knew Duncan
from,
would be
Canada.
Eating lunch. Right. Very good. Well, Tom,
that sounds good. What are you having? I'm kind of hungry already.
What's for lunch? Yeah. I was messaging with Duncan earlier in the week. Going to look forward to seeing him in October in Chicago. So, hey, Tom.
Yes, sir.
You want to talk about what happened this morning in Jackson Hole?
Oh, you mean about the Powell briefing?
Yeah,
the thing.
That one.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
But you have to read the James James is in the house from Atlanta,
Aha,
one of our outstanding LeadSmart customers.
that's right.
If you need office supplies, James is your man in Atlanta for sure.
That's right.
Public sub. Okay. Anyway, I've lost my train of thought. I'm thinking about that public
Well,
sub.
that's it took me a second. That Publix is the grocery store. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Okay. Well,
Um,
Mrs. Gilman will we won't tell her about that.
yeah. So yeah, anyway, I haven't seen all the data, but what I did see is Powell obviously was speaking in Jackson Hole at the economic summit, said that, rate cuts are on the horizon. They're coming. But from what I understand, and again, I haven't seen all the details, he didn't say when, and he didn't say for how much, or for what, what the rate cuts would be. I looked at the market earlier. It looked like the market was pleased with whatever he said. I think they just validated what they probably already thought. But yeah, I guess something's coming. Well, as I said last week, right? I think September is a foregone conclusion at this point.
His words were, the time has come for policy to adjust.
Yeah, yeah.
So is that is are you hoping that it's not September, or
No, I'm not. I don't. Well, I don't. I just look. I think it's fine if it's September. Frankly, I personally, I don't stake aside. I think doing a cut in September is fine. I think though that there's a lot of tentacles with all of this, right? If they start cutting too fast, you can spook the market. You can spook
absolutely.
business. You can, if they cut, it's so I don't know what the right answer is as far as the speed or how much. It would be great if they just did one this year and then they waited till January to do the rest of them. That way I could enjoy my steak, but we'll see.
Well, our wager aside, I think the markets are screaming that what has to happen. The Dow is up. I'm sorry, the New York Stock Exchange is up 1.06%. S&P 500 is up 0.5%, and the Dow is up 0.6. So Nasdaq is 0.83. And I have actually, and Microsoft's down. So kind of funny. But what has been interesting is Treasury yields fell on Friday this morning, which is an article that I looked at quickly. The benchmark.
That would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Which I mean, I think that just reinforces, right. The big thing as there was, and what he had to say this morning is, I grabbed a recap online real quick and said he covered 4 or 5 different areas. Policy. He says the time has come for policy to adjust. The direction of the travel is clear, and the timing and pace of rate cuts will depend on incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance. And then he said, related to inflation, my confidence has grown that inflation is on the sustainable path back to 2%. Again, the 2% thing, when you look at the history of where that came from, with a passing comment by a politician in New Zealand that the world bounces around that 2% as the number, just still astounds me. But okay. He talked about employment. He said it seems unlikely that the labor market will be a source of elevated inflationary pressures anytime soon. We do not seek or welcome further cooling in labor market conditions. To me, that's a little spark of, I got to do something quick here. Then the balance of risks, he said, but inflation and labor market data show an evolving situation. The upside risks to inflation have diminished and the downside risks to employment have increased. And then finally, his emphasis point was, we will do everything we can to support a strong labor market as we further progress towards price stability. There was all kinds of, in one of the articles that I read from Reuters this morning, they probably had 10 different well-known economists with their take on it all. My view of it is, I hope that they don't do a 0.5 point on the first cut. I think, and again, let's completely forget whether it's what your thoughts are about one cut or my thought about 2 cuts or more. It's about what's best here. Is we can figure out who buys the steaks, but I think progressively quarter point or 25 basis point cuts is the way to go, because the markets are going to get spooked regardless, if they do too much.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of, and you could argue, right? You could put up a legitimate argument for one cut this year, three cuts this year, over a half a point or more per cut. I mean, you could argue probably legitimately for all kinds of different scenarios here.
Yeah.
It'll just be interesting to see how they play it out. And I do think they have a little bit of a tightrope to walk here. And, hey, not everyone's going to be happy about everything all the time, right? The stock
Yep.
market is definitely, let's just say, a bit overbought at the moment. And I believe is looking for a reason to correct itself a little bit over the next, course of the next 90 to 120
Mhm.
days. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. But
Well, a
yeah,
lot happening. A lot happening.
anything is possible.
Yeah. Well, if you just think back to the fourth quarter of last year, this fourth quarter is going to be much more interesting than the fourth quarter of
Yes.
last year, right?
Yes.
Good. All right. Let's kind of move ahead here and talk a little bit further. We posted a number of articles about this morning, even before, we do this, we post to get our newsletter ready on Friday evenings. So, or Thursday evenings, I should say. So as we talk about our segment today, which we're in right now, economy and supply chain in the newsletter. Again, if you don't get that and you would like to get the newsletter, let us know. Publish an article about business activity edges lower, pricing powers ebb a little bit further. I had posted another article about jobless claims, but the big article that was kind of here was, and you had commented on this when we were talking earlier, is this new jobs data show growth has been far weaker than initially reported. There was quite a big underestimate there, right?
I guess the largest in maybe forever or in a long, long time.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, grossly underestimated or overestimated the job growth. And I don't know. I'd like to understand the story behind that a little bit more about, how that happens. And that's not even the final number. The final number of
Right.
all of this doesn't come out until February of
Yeah.
next
So
year.
the title of
So
the article, this one was from CNN, but it was a lot of other places, was that new data shows U.S. job growth has been far weaker than initially reported. And 818,000 fewer jobs in March than were initially reported. So, you know what? It kind of, I just, oh, my friend, it just makes me go back to thinking, and since we've been doing this show, coming up on a couple of years, I just think so much more about um, economic factors than I probably did previously. Right? I pay closer attention to a lot of these things, and it's just kind of one more view that, and I'm sure there's people that are out there in academia that are looking at these things, but I just kind of go back to the 2% number and how that kind of randomly came around. And then, the PCI and the tools, it's maybe it's time that with the data that's available, and, we talk so much and we will be today about AI and so forth. Maybe we're time time in history where it's a good place to review. Let's put some more firm things in place and some more firm numbers that we're looking at, and how we're gathering those data, because if you could be that wrong, right, um of 818,000 fewer jobs in the US, if you can be that off in one of these settings, there's problems with that data, right?
I would suspect, yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's not easy data to get anyway, but
No, but
that's
maybe our data points that they make decisions off of for things that are as important as we think about related to, our economy in the U.S. and the largest economy in the world, right? Maybe the factors that go into how that's decided and how these decisions are made. Maybe we need to rethink those data points
yeah.
based upon the fact that, I mean, just as simple as we have AI and we have, much more relevant pieces out there that we could probably be looking at rather than the stuff that's 20, 30 years old. So,
Well, the
but
three
again,
legs, right? The three legs of the stool right now, economically, that most everybody tends to look at is growth, GDP, gross domestic product, that kind of stuff. They look at the job market and then they look at the stock market.
well,
There's
in consumer pricing and all of
right,
these things are
right.
big factors in this.
But those all factor into the growth is what's happening with the growth. And then you have
Mhm.
the Fed with the inflation aspect of it, kind of in the middle and the inflation aspect of all of those things that are there as well. But there's not, all of those things are not entirely dependent on each other. There's a lot of interdependencies, but there's a lot of things that are independent within each of those as well. So, yeah, I
Well,
don't
one
know.
of the
I don't know the right answer to it, but yes, maybe there is a amazing new AI system that can do a better job of pulling all this.
it just seems like maybe it's time to look at those things. And we've got both got I'm not sure. I'm not confident either presidential candidate even really understands all of this stuff. But one of them is saying he'd like to have an impact on what the Fed does. So we'll see what plays out with all of that. So, you know what? As we talk about in this segment that we're in today, is our segment on supply chain and the economy. So, big rail strike started yesterday in Canada. The good news is it's interesting if as we talk about this, we've talked about labor, earlier in the year with some strikes and last year with some things with the automakers and so forth. Boy, in Canada, that the federal government wasn't uh, leery about jumping right in the mix of all of this and having expectations of what should happen next. And so I thought it was kind of interesting because that happened right away. They got both sides of the table pretty quickly. Now it's still going to take them. I think the article said it was only a 1-day strike basically, but it's going to take them a series of days to get. In fact, I had a note about that. Up to a week to catch up on shipments after a 1-day strike. So kind of a big deal, but they got the labor minister in Canada, got them, and we've got Duncan with us here that's in Canada. If he has any thoughts, I don't want to interrupt his lunch, but if he had any thoughts on that, well, it was kind of nice to see somebody get people back to the table because we'll see, in the US, sometimes we'll see strikes go on for weeks before the government will jump in and try and, put a little pressure on things. So it's good to see that. So
Do you have any take on why that was much maybe more efficient? Is it just the culture that exists there, or what do you why? Or just the
I don't
government?
know. I'd like to. It would be not quite guessing, but educated guessing. I think to think on that. I think my belief would be the government's just willing to put a stronger pressure on that. I don't know if Canadian unions are stronger than U.S. unions. They're both Teamsters in this case. So I'm not aware enough about
Okay.
that. Maybe someone could share with us if they know or have thoughts on it. But they sure acted quicker,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I don't know if there's more power available in that. The reason, that's important to keep an eye on is it's more, just we think about, you and I are both here in California, we think about some of these things is we're trying to keep an eye on supply chain issues globally. So we talk regularly about issues in the Suez Canal or the Panama Canal or, shipping delays out of Shanghai or whatever it might be, because it impacts wholesale distribution globally as well as manufacturing and getting the parts in.
Yep.
So the amount of things, I can't remember where the article quoted this, but the amount of barrels of oil that come across the border every day on rail lines from the oil sands in northern Canada to other drilling spots in the U.S. was actually surprised me. I wish I remember the number, but the amount of goods and service or goods that are coming across the border each day in the U.S. is substantial, going to manufacturers.
Right.
So could have been a significant supply. Basically, what they're saying now is it just puts the supply chain behind a week in that
Yep.
setting. So
Yep.
I will make before we jump on that, Tom. I did think something caught my eye that was interesting in this article, and it's pretty cool phenomena of the technology in the day and the where we live in the world. It makes me think back, the Paul Revere riding his horse with his lantern that the British were coming was getting information out just, a little over 200 years ago. And now the Teamsters posted on Twitter or X about their update about the picket lines coming down. The amount of, you think about what was that oh, what was it called in the Middle East when all the something summer a few years back, probably 4 or 5 years ago, when things were getting news sources were getting shut down. I believe it was in Israel, and everything that was going on, the news that was getting out of the Middle East for the most part was getting out on social media and mostly on Twitter. So pretty interesting to see that source. And obviously there's all kinds of the political resources that are
It's
out
the
there
most
now as
effective
well.
channel, right? So what's the most effective channel to get the news out? That's
And speed.
Yeah,
right?
speed.
Speed. Yep, speed. So good. Let's roll into our manufacturing and distribution segment here. What's the first one we got there? No excuses. Manufacturers must digitize now. What are
Yeah,
your
this was a
thoughts?
great article. It's from Chief Executive. Really, really, I thought really well done article. I hope, and I know you may have them up in front of you. I'd like to go through those 4 or 5 things that they talked about in there about why manufacturers, and I assume this would apply to wholesale distributors as well, are not digitally
Sure.
transforming at the pace that certainly all of us, service providers, vendors, and media. I mean, there's just so much talk, right? If you go to any show, it's all about, hey, you need to transform, you need to transform, you need to transform, and yet the market doesn't move at that pace.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was some really good insights. Do you want to hit on those real quick?
I will. It's kind of interesting. Brian's with us from this morning. Joined us from Distribution Strategy Group. They've had a big AI event. They've got another big profit summit coming up. They've had some good shows recently on their podcasts, and we've talked about this. And I'm going to play into the AI game on this before I go into those specific points about this. But I just wanted to make a comment that the article starts out with. It says, despite widespread, long-standing industry understanding of the need for change, far too many companies have hesitated far too long. This now threatens their very existence. Maybe their very existence might be a little exaggerated in that, but I think the reality of it is, and I talk to you work on with your team at LeadSmart mostly with our customers. Jump in once in a while and talking to industry folks. I'm on the phone every day with people across globally in industry, mostly in distribution and some in manufacturing. A simple example is we've come up with a number that it's anecdotal, but 70 plus, probably 75% plus of the companies that we interact with, which is thousands of them on our mailing lists, well over 1,000, close to 2,000, in fact, over 2,000 within some of the buying groups that we're partnered with. 70+% of these companies have never even put a foundational tool in their business like CRM, right? They have an ERP. Oftentimes it's antiquated ERP. It's too tentacled out into other systems in their business to easily replace. And they buy these, what we call spot software products that, are nice to haves, but they're way behind on foundational systems within their business, i.e., and we're going to have an article here shortly as well. The foundational tools are quickly becoming not just ERP and CRM, but now we're going to start looking at e-commerce is going to become foundational, right? We've got marketing automation should probably become foundational to this as well. And now we're really getting to this point. And this article talked about, it's about manufacturers, but I would just say, for our audience, it's equal with distributors as well. It's crazy, and you talk about NAW would say that National Association of Wholesalers would tell you that I think it's 2/3 of the U.S. GDP goes through wholesale distribution, and article talks about 3/4 of global GDP, or $75 trillion, comes from manufacturing. So now is the time for this, and the article talks about navigating some roadblocks, and I think that was the key points that you were talking about. They talk about lack of urgency from boards and investors to drive long-term transformation, CEOs nearing retirement who are unwilling to embark on multi-year change efforts, scarcity of digital talent and expertise within manufacturing organizations. Again, add just distribution where you see manufacturing, high perceived cost and unclear ROI of large-scale digitization initiatives, and perhaps most important, manufacturers/distributors are reluctant to disrupt or cannibalize existing profitable analog businesses. And I would throw out to you, my friend, I'm going to read that one again, because unless you tell me different, this is probably what we see the most. Manufacturers and distributors are reluctant to disrupt or cannibalize existing profitable analog business. It's not
Yeah.
broken yet.
Yeah. No, I mean, I thought that summary was like right on the money. I mean, that's
Yeah.
everything that we hear and talk about every day.
Yep.
Um, and you could argue, hey, if you're a family-owned business, or you could, or in a profitable business, you could probably argue that those are legitimate reasons not to take some
Sure.
of these things on. I think the
Yep.
point, though, if you keep reading the article, right, is the longer that you wait for this to start looking at these things, the farther and farther you're going to be behind, and you are going to be in a situation. I would say in the last 2 weeks, the amount of conversations I've had about the urgency of AI, not just a conversation of AI, but more of an urgency of
Mhm.
how do we start incorporating that into the business, is picking up,
Yeah.
right? And these are people that obviously are taking the effort to do the transformation. So the longer you wait and the more you're in the analog world, as they describe there, the the farther you're going to have the and the farther behind you're going to be. And as AI really does permeate, right, which it hasn't permeated, but really permeates the business and the business, and I think they even talk a little bit about this in the article, you're going to be just that much farther behind. So,
Mhm.
and it went on to go like, how do you deal with it? And I mean, there's some, I thought, really good,
No,
data.
this was solid. Yeah, but I mean, it's things we pretty much talk about, related to this every week, and it's interesting. We talked a couple weeks ago. We had some data. We talked about kind of the Gartner hype cycle, right? There has been no. I mean, I think we're getting past the hype of AI, and there's been quite a few people talking about that. That now it's time to get past this. Okay, let me go figure out what it's about, and now we need to figure it out in our business. But my view of this, and obviously it's a little bit biased from the standpoint of the product that the company that you and I founded make, but there are so many tools out there right now that are popping up that are one-off tools, and it's AI driven. But for the most part, the manufacturers and distributors that we talk to consistently, again, I'm at show after show. I think I have 7 or 8 events in the next 90 days that I'll be at. In fact, far less than 90 days. And the vast majority of the people that we talk to are well intended. They've gone out and bought, I don't want to name any of them, but they're one-off products that are
They're
supposed
point
to help
products.
their
Yeah, they're point products.
point products that people don't. And point products is probably in our technology world a little more used, but it's just a solution for a singular smaller issue. Then address the big issue of digitizing their organization with having a long term. AI is a component of all of this, but they're missing foundational tools in their business, not just CRM, but updating and upgrading ERP that are going to hold their companies behind. And because it doesn't, when you choose an industry specific customer intelligence and CRM platform that has AI built into it, like the one that we make, you're ahead of the game with a foundational tool. But so you're 90 and 120 days later, you're starting to see relevant results from that in your business as you're continuing to expand that a tool like ours. But when you start thinking about the impact of upgrading and updating your ERP, which a whole lot of people do need, that's a multi-year project typically,
Can be.
right? But to your point earlier, what this article is talking about is, what the people that are doing it, and we mentioned earlier that DSG folks and MDM is doing events, and lots of folks out there are trying to educate people, not just vendors like us, to move to that direction. Because to your point earlier, Tom, is the people that are doing it are going to start eating your lunch,
Mhm.
right? They're going to be more efficient, and it's not, you're going to be trying to hire. I was talking to a manufacturer recently, and they're too busy to work on bringing a tool in like LeadSmart Channel Cloud within their business that would make their people exponentially more efficient. And they have hundreds of employees around the world. They're too busy hiring because they've got all these open spots. And I put the case to them that says, what if you could slow down on your hiring because people you have were exponentially more efficient through technology? Can't get that through their head, right? And we're seeing that. And I
Yep.
thought this article did a nice job of kind of putting the risks out there. And they talked about, some things in there about, they had 5 points about trying to help put a plan together. So good article. Again, if you don't get our newsletter and you would like to, it's called Around the Horn and Wholesale Distribution. It goes out every Friday morning to thousands of people. Love to have you get it as well. Just send us a note at hello@leadsmarttech.com, and we will get that out to you. Or you could go to the podcast website, which is www.aroundthehornpod.com, and we will get that to you as well. So
I think we struck a little bit of a chord here on a couple of people is,
yeah.
I think Brian brings up a good point, right? We see, I mean, I'm sure this is the world, right? The DSG Digital Strategy Group talks all the time, but the next generation is becoming way more digital, which
Mhm.
we've talked a lot about along the way. Bob's in the house. Good to see Bob. As Bob says, a trick with the tech is to first think about how you would do it without being plugged into the wall or connected to a battery. Then think how you would augment and amplify it with the tech. So in other words, I think what he's basically saying there is, okay, well, what are you trying to do from the analog world? And then how can you amplify that from the digital side? And Kelly also, who I know works a lot in the industry and works with a lot of companies in the industry, saying, same thing, right? Don't know where to start. They don't have the one to do the work. AI will transfer this eventually, but so forth and so forth. So
Yep.
I think we all are running into this, but there are, you might believe 75 or 80% of the company don't have foundational tech, but the 20% that do, I mean, just this week, I know we need to move on, so I'll try and keep this short, but just this week, we have a lot of our customers using Eclipse as their ERP, right?
Yep.
And
Epicor product.
yeah, Epicor product. And we worked out a kind of a taxonomy with Eclipse on what are the key data items that are going to be used to drive AI when you're using Eclipse data in the sales world, in the sales process, and which data points are not. And as we started to look through that data taxonomy and a taxonomy, kind of like a hierarchy or the
Yep.
structure of that data, the power that we started to see of how that data can be really used from an AI perspective to drive sales was, I mean, people, some of the conversations were like, holy crap, I had no idea,
Right.
right? Some of these things are possible. And I
But that
think we keep
go ahead.
waiting for the killer app. It hasn't quite happened, but it's going to happen. And, we're even seeing it in our world.
No, absolutely. And that ties back to extracting siloed data from within an organization and
Mhm.
getting the right view of your data, right? And I don't want to belabor this too long, but there are way too many companies out there who have been hugely successful, maybe multi-generational, hundreds of millions, if not close to $1 billion, probably the hundreds of millions range, that are just hugely successful. And the idea of moving out of an analog world to a digital world, and I don't even want to say it's an analog to digital. I'll call it, instead of analog, I'll call it antiquated digital, or rudimentary digital versus foundational digital, with a long-term execution plan on how it's going to grow the organization. That's going to be the kicker for people,
Mhm.
you know. And it's going to take people. There are people that it's just going to take, when they look back and go, wait a minute, we missed our numbers 2 years in a row, and we gave up market share to XYZ company, and we lost 5 people to XYZ company, and they're doing these things because they're in the same trade association or buying group, and I can see what they're doing. It's unfortunately going to take some of that.
Yep.
Good. All right, let's jump ahead here. There's posted an article here as well. This came from MDM, but it was in the news in general. Toyota recalls 34,000 cars due to distributors' inaccurate stickers. So here's a gig. We won't spend much time on this. The only reason that's here is there are a lot of wholesale distributors out there, specific in a handful of markets, but you really see this a lot in the hose and fitting world and so forth, where they do kitting, as it's oftentimes termed, or they'll build assemblies of multiple manufacturers' products into a singular product. Maybe change a fitting on something or doing things. This article is here for is the reminder that says, hey, you know what? Be cautious with labeling and so forth. This article was about Toyota had to recall 34,000 cars because one of their distributors who did some additions to the car made a mistake with the labeling and weights and so forth. And it wasn't that nobody got hurt. It wasn't a safety issue. It was a labeling and compliance issue that went with it. So because so much of that happens with people repackaging things or kitting things and so forth, great reminder, make sure you're meeting all of the standards and the requirements, you're insured properly, you're in alignment with all of the manufacturers that you're working with if you're in that case. So a good reminder there.
Pretty costly recall though for a sticker.
Yeah, but there it is, right?
Yep.
So good. All right, let's jump into our e-commerce and marketing segment. Digital Commerce 360 article here. E-commerce is now part of the B2B operating standard. Tom, want to throw some thoughts out on that one? It kind of ties into our digitalization.
Yeah, no, I think it fits right within your discussion of the foundational products, right?
Yep.
And I'll even go a little bit more abstract, right? What do you need to be able to be thinking about? Well, e-commerce, right, is how do you allow your customers or your prospects to purchase in a self-serve, or not even necessarily purchase, but start to shop and go through the process of research and whatever online, right?
Yep.
That's a foundational element of any business, is the ability for that self-serve perspective.
Yep.
Just as you said, right, a foundational element of ERP is I've got to be able to run my transactions and my orders and my quotes. And the foundational element of a CRM is how do I make my salespeople more efficient and enable the team to sell more and grow and so forth. So, I think, this is what talking about is that and I guess there's still a lot of companies that have not embraced e-commerce.
Oh, yeah.
Or not embraced self-serve. But again, I agree with you. It's just one of those same foundational elements that are going to be part of any sort of modern futurized business. And this was a good article, again, kind of summarizing that and some of the stats.
Yep. Well, one of the interesting, they surveyed 400 companies, each with more than 20 employees and revenues above 20 million. And it said that 70% of B2B sellers have an e-commerce site or an online portal. Additionally, it said they provide, let's see, where was I at there? It said in a landscape where customers expect convenience and flexibility as standard, the 23% of B2B organizations not yet embracing e-commerce risk getting left behind, while the remainder capitalize on their competitive advantage. I think if that study was, and the research that they did there was 4,000 companies, I think they would probably find that 70% that do have something falls to probably 40 or 50% at the most.
Okay.
Because we see a lot of people that are just getting started. And the other side of that is what level of quality. And this is something that's, I don't want to say not fair, because capitalism is capitalism, right? But the challenge is, and it doesn't seem like a week goes by that we don't talk about this at some level, is that buyers now are their business life, and we're going to talk about this in our people and leadership segment later, but their digital life and their business life are merging, right? So I always use the example, the guy that's, the 60+% of B2B buyers are millennials. So that's the guy that, used Apple Pay when he went to the movies with his girlfriend the day before, or took an Uber and used an app, and buys all of his groceries through Uber Eats or Amazon, fresh. And when he gets to work, he wants that same experience and is looking for that. And that's a challenge for smaller wholesale distributors that haven't fully embraced digitization in their business yet, because just because I have e-commerce does not mean I have e-commerce at a level that people are expecting. There are some very generic tools out there. You can find them, some of them through your trade associations and buying groups that don't give that high level of experience yet. So it's kind of an interesting factor when you kind of put that, not just do I have anything,
Sure.
but do I have something that's
That's
relevant?
why I don't like to just say, do you have e-commerce? Do you have
Right.
CRM? Do you have ERP? That's not the right way to look at it. It's foundationally, do you have an experience that allows your customer to shop and make
Right.
purchases and do things in a self-serve manner?
And their
Do you have an
components. Right. I'm sorry, Tom, go ahead.
do you have an experience that enables your sales team to be more effective and more efficient and more, again, providing a better, do you have an experience? All of those things are, there's a specific outcome for them versus just saying e-commerce, CRM, ERP,
Mhm. Right.
marketing automation, and so forth.
Yep.
Um, so look,
Well,
I'm not saying that it's easy, and I want to touch on a couple of these comments here.
yeah, before you
Right?
before you jump though, Tom, I think the important point of that is, and I do want to hit some of these. Got a couple of good comments that just came into that. I think the important part of this is we talk about those foundational pieces. We've talked about point products and so forth that are challenges out there. The other side of this that I think is critical is all of this part of a digital roadmap, as opposed to I'm just going to buy things, right? And that's the key that I think we really want to talk about is, and that's where I think the consultants of the world that are working with these folks need to be really narrowly focused on, pinpointed focus on, is what's the digital roadmap for the organization, as opposed to what do I okay, I need to buy e-commerce now. Okay, well, where does e-commerce fall in my digital roadmap? Because if you buy e-commerce, and we've got a comment we'll talk about here in just a minute, that's not able to easily connect in with the ERP system, or I don't have a foundational tool like an AI enabled CRM that can track e-commerce data, ERP data, marketing automation data, and show a customer journey across the board, I'm missing the digital roadmap by just buying something singular. So let's jump to those comments.
Yeah, well, I'll hit Valinda's comment here first,
Yeah.
right? What she's saying is e-commerce requires integration with the ERP. Absolutely,
Hmm.
right? And there is complexity to that. And she's saying, starting this direction is critical for our organizations. Smaller business need to look at this seriously as is no longer an option to be in the market competitively. Look, I am not going to sit here and say that this is necessarily easy or a magic wand.
No,
But
no.
but I mean, Kevin, you've been in this industry way longer than I have. It wasn't easy for these companies to build the businesses that they had, right? Nothing's easy, right? So it's just now a matter of going through the process. And I agree with the roadmap perspective. I also want to hit Bob's comment because there's also an organizational aspect to things as
Hmm.
well. Like who
Absolutely.
has it? And, he says the problem with B2B e-com is who owns it. Marketing owns it, sales owns it, IT owns it, but there's a lot of different stakeholders that need to go into the mix here. Again, not saying this is easy. These are just things that are um, all kind of have to be taken into account on that bigger picture. We
You
seem to be
made
on
a
a team today about this. So
Well, this is important stuff, right? This is where things are headed. And you made an interesting point a few minutes ago that I'm appreciative. And by the way, thank you everybody for your comments. The more the better. Comments just make the show better, right? And Belinda, thank you for yours, and Duncan and
I
Bob.
love
Yeah.
hearing the viewpoints, right?
No,
That are
it's good. And you know what, by the way, don't hesitate to disagree with us as well, because Tom and I disagree with each other here and there also. So
yeah.
the Mrs. Brown thinks that the more I disagree or argue with Tom, the less I'll cause her headaches. So works good that way. But
She
you
usually
made a
agrees with me, so that's
she usually agrees with you. That's funny. Yeah. Yes. Thank you for that. That's just what I need. Um, Threw me off there. You made a good comment earlier. I'm appreciative of it. Not just one, many, but in particular, you made a comment about how the hard work that went into some of these companies getting there, whether you're a manufacturer, you're a distributor. Um, and I think about that a lot. Specifically, we meet wholesale distributors every day, and I had a great meeting at the affiliated distributors. Uh, Bearing and Power Transmission national meeting a couple of weeks ago. I guess it was last week. Just great people, right? Just good human beings. Uh, and I was meeting with a gentleman and he was there with his daughter. And I won't mention the company, don't know their ages. I'm going to say he's late 60s and she's probably mid 40s. And she had never thought she wanted to work in the family business. And now she's going to come in and take over and run the company, and they're figuring out their digital roadmap. But when I asked him how he started the business, I think there are 14 or 15 branches, and his comment was, such and such a company looked like they were going to fire me, so I went out and figured I could do it on my own. And the work that went into building that company. Now you think about that when we talk about companies that are third and fourth generation, we see all the time. So let's just say they're a $100 million a year company with 5 branches. What took you, say, 50 years to get from 0 to or from 1 to 5 branches and $100 million, with the right digital roadmap ahead for your organization that's well planned, going from $100 million to $2 million is probably $200 million could probably be 5 years for organizations versus 50 years. So the exponential growth opportunity that's there from these investments, but it's not from just saying, I just went and bought something. It's from having that plan and the roadmap ahead of how we're going to get there.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And I think that it's a good point, right? Because there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that have taken place to get to the point where these companies are at.
Yeah.
And yes, they can go to not just a whole nother level of growth, but a whole nother level of experience, customer experience. A lot of comments in here about the importance of customer experience. And just, a lot of companies are concerned about succession planning and all of that. It just opens up the door to that having less friction and more opportunity.
Two great comments here. We don't need to highlight them or whatever. I'll hit them really quickly though, that align, right? Bob was talking about companies need when companies adapt to tech, sometimes they lose touch with the core competencies that give them a competitive advantage. And he's talking about that tech needs to adapt to the company. And Valinda was saying something similar about delivering fast revenue results. That's something for people to really be thinking about is, when you buy off the shelf software, whether it's an ERP system or a CRM or customer intelligence solution, it should be either already prepared or out of the box ready to work in your industry, or it should be, and in our case, we'll give you a good example is, we talk about LeadSmart Channel Cloud is 70% ready for most distributors right out of the box. But that last 30% is when we hit what Valinda and Bob were just talking about, is that now we bring core competencies of the company and sales processes. And I've never met yet, and Tom, you work closer on this than I do, but I have yet to meet a company that uses our software that has not refined and enhanced and or developed new processes for how they manage leads, how they work with quotes, and so forth. When you have a plan and a roadmap in place to adopt technology, and you're working with the right partners, whether it's us or somebody else on a related product, is the understanding of your business so that your business isn't trying to get stuck with having to change everything because of the technology, but the technology aligns and meshes and integrates with your business to make it better is key. So,
yeah. And I also want to just quickly touch on Kelly's comment here. In particular, what she says we want is a buying experience.
He's a pirate today. This is
Arg. That's right.
Arg. Arg.
That's right. What we want is a buying experience, not a transactional one.
Yeah.
Right. And I think we talked a lot about these point products or these, again, there's no way you can really create an experience without having that roadmap in that structure that's there along the way. I'm very intrigued with the amount of, you can tell there's a lot of emotion behind this.
Yeah, it's passion.
We have it that's out there. And you probably see this even in the shows that you're going to, where you may meet people within the company that are frustrated that they haven't been able to push more modernization and technology forward. And there certainly seems to be a lot of emotion in the subject in the area.
No, they're absolutely. And I think where you see that the challenge here is, and we've got some folks that are with us today that are distributors themselves. I think the challenge happens is I know I need to do this. I don't know where to start. I'm going to I go to the AI event for distribution. I go to I go to my buying groups, whatever it might be. is I do all these things and I go get educated on it, but I'm stuck, right? I'm stuck with where to start. Maybe I don't have the budgets yet, whatever it might be. And I think that's the issue here is get started with something, but have a plan of how you're going to move down the path.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
We're like way behind here. So where do you want to go here so we don't make this a 3-hour event?
Let's see. Well, the next article we were talking about was why AI and B2B marketing is essential for survival and success. Talked about AI quite a bit already. Why don't we jump ahead,
I do
Tom?
want to
Yeah,
hit
you're
that
right.
one real quick if we
Let's
don't, if
jump.
we can.
We can't. If you want to make a couple comments, then let's
I just
jump
want to
into
make a couple
technology.
comments and we can move on, right? Because
Yeah,
they
great.
use the word, right? One of the biggest and most significant benefits, this is from the article, one of the most significant benefits of AI in B2B marketing is increased level of personalization.
Mm-hmm.
It allows business to create highly targeted and personalized content, improve customer engagement and conversion. I just wanted to touch on that word personalization because it's come up a lot, actually, or fairly frequently in
Right.
conversations I've had. Personalization isn't like, hey, just hi, Kevin, I put your name in the email or
Yes.
things along those lines. Personalization comes from really knowing who it is that you're talking to and then having the most relevant conversation that you can with that person based on, or that company based on their needs.
Yep.
And I do agree. Well, I see it all the time, and I see it every day in some of the stuff that even we're doing is AI really makes it a whole heck of a lot easier to do that research and to understand things about your customer and their business and what's going on with them, which then provides the foundation for that personalization.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to clarify that because that word personalization has come up quite a bit in conversation, and it's way more than, hey, I put your name and your company name in the email, and
Yep.
so therefore it's personalized.
That's good.
All right.
Good. So we've been trying to expand a little bit more on some more marketing tools and so forth with that. So we're going to continue to add to that, and I've expanded where we get some of our data from recently too. So this marketingprofs.com or marketing professionals has got some pretty solid data. There's another article that we're going to jump over today in the newsletter. Again, if you'd like to get the newsletter, just let us know. AI business strategies: 5 ways brands and agencies can properly use tech. That comes from adage.com, which is a good one as well. But jumping into our technology, cybersecurity, and AI segment, 47% of US firms suffer data breaches resulting in severe financial loss. Any quick takeaways from that one, Tom?
Well, and this isn't directly associated with the article, but we were chatting about this earlier.
Mm-hmm.
As we talk a lot about, the siloed data and that we need to consolidate data and all of that. Well, ironically, right, siloed data is actually more difficult from a security standpoint or more difficult for hackers and other people to really get into because everything's siloed, right? You have this
Mm-hmm.
over here and that over here. As you start consolidating your data and consolidating your systems into more integrated systems, it in some ways opens the door to making it easier for more sophisticated hacks, ransomware, and so forth. The reason I bring that up is consolidation is not going to go away, or holistic data are not going to go away. And this article is pointing out is that, and even both these articles, right, is you really can't ignore the cyber or the security aspect of that.
Yep.
And to me, that just factors right into the roadmap that you were talking about. Is okay, as I start to put these things together, what are the things that I have to be, again, aware of or be thinking about anyway from a security perspective to make sure I'm doing the best possible way of preventing those attacks. And because that's, half companies, and my guess it's even higher because a lot of people don't report that they've had these things, right? Not everybody talks about what they've had happen in those areas.
Yep. Yeah. I think it's important, when it's interesting, we kind of think about this. I think most people do is, that's big company stuff, right? That's going to happen to Microsoft, or that's going to happen to, a pharmaceutical company or whatever it might be. But the reality of it is, and my takeaway kind of was this: is they said from this research that was done said the global average cost of a breach has hit nearly $4.9 million this year. Well, okay, that's great, but when you think about that, okay, 4.9 million, that's a huge number. It can impact companies. And part of the article said this as well. Said if you're focused on growth in your company and you get hit with a $4.9 million hit to your company, that changes what a board meeting looks like pretty quickly, right? Not just about the breach, it's about the cost. But I think what's interesting about that is if you think about that $4.9 million, if I'm a distributor, the average size family owned distributor or employee owned distributor out there, and probably, just as well if I'm PE owned, the same thing. 'Cause, like, PEs are looking to drive those dollars and profits out of those opportunities or those organizations. Is I think about that big number is, well, XYZ pharmaceutical company, their overall costs, not just what they paid out, but their costs related to it were billions of dollars. And this happening more and more every day, that 4.9 million being the average, it's going to keep going up. And so now if I'm thinking about, I'm a small potatoes distributor, but I get hit with it, maybe I'm a $20 million or $15 million a year distributor. That number, when it climbs on the average, it's going to impact my business as well. And it's going to go along with that. So now all of a sudden, maybe it only impacts my business by a couple of $100,000, but what does that couple of $100,000 mean to me, and the time away and so forth? So, the time of the importance of taking advantage of the tools that are available to protect our data is key. So, it's crazy. And the last thing I'll hit on this from this article was that said 30% of respondents to this survey had data that could not be recovered after a successful ransomware attack. So just because, whether you pay the ransomware or not, the costs that go with that and the challenges that happen in your business are important. So
Well, and it's not just the cost of the ransomware, right? There's a lot of other
yeah,
costs that go along with this.
that's the tip of the
There's
iceberg.
a remediation that you have to. I mean,
Yeah,
there's just a lot of things that have to go on in
absolutely.
it.
Yeah.
So
Well, let's jump into this next article because it ties together really well.
yeah, it's the same. This is an interesting one. Is that after a wave of attacks, snowflakes? So I guess from what I understand is that there was a wave of attacks, security attacks into Snowflake. Snowflake is
Yep.
a data warehouse, data lake environment a lot of companies use, especially in the tech world, and a lot of Fortune 500 companies.
And we have some customers that have been using it.
Yeah, we have some, yeah, that have used Snowflake. And so, but they just happened to attack the Snowflake repository. Again, Snowflake is a tool for integrating data into a central source, like I
Mhm.
was saying earlier. Um, Snowflake, to agree, looks like they were blamed a lot for this, but it doesn't look like it really was so much a Snowflake problem as it was more of the fact that the customers that were using Snowflake didn't have the proper security infrastructure in place
Right.
to support that.
Yep.
Again, I just want to reiterate on this is that and we're putting a lot of emphasis on this, and we do work a lot, on our platform, is how to make sure that when you start to put these foundational technology pieces in there that are consolidating data and are going to be things that are going to bring things together, is that it's a constant, I guess, vigilance on that platform and what are the security protocols that can be put in place with that platform.
Mhm. Yep.
And what is the risk of it? I think as Bob said, I think a couple minutes ago, right? Assume a breach will occur.
Yeah. Yep.
Then look at how long can I survive without that data without access to being there. Just assume that it's going to occur and then do everything you can to prevent that. And I
Yep.
think that's all that happened here is that it didn't quite get prevented as well. And so, the common denominator was using through Snowflake, but it wasn't necessarily their
Well,
issue.
it goes back, and we were talking before we went live today, that back to, we use that term foundational tools, right? And I think when we talk about a lot of distributors, and this could be your private equity owned, your independently owned, it doesn't matter who you are, is that in that setting, is that I'm just going to buy some software and make an assumption that this company's safe, right? And I tell people all the time that, especially if you're looking for the term you used earlier, Tom, being point software or your kind of one-off tools that are getting bought by departments. So a good example is I might be the CEO of hey, we just got the highlight comment of the day, Tom. You should probably hit that. So there we go.
Joanne
Joanne
says you're
said,
looking good.
right.
I
So
don't know who Joanne is, but that's okay.
Joanne is Scott's wife, and Scott is a former business part of mine and partner of mine in a project we did years ago. And before that, he was a customer. And you and Scott need to meet because he's probably one of the smartest guys I know. And his golf game matches his intellect as well. But that's funny. So I'll take the compliment. Thanks, Joanne. But Tom, back to my point is we think about this again, and we have the privilege, I think it is, to be in the inner workings of companies every day, right? Of distributors and manufacturers both. We know their leadership team. We might even break bread with them and so forth as well. But the issue that comes from all of this is if I'm a CEO, it doesn't matter if you're a $10 million a year company or you're a $750 million a year company. I'm going to start having responsibility for all of this. One, because it's happening in my organization under my watch. Two, there's huge impacts to the financials of the company when we start thinking about cybersecurity. But I've got a marketing department that found an AI tool that seems interesting, or I have my finance people found another, or my procurement people found another tool that works great related to supply chain issues, or I'm found this hot newfangled CRM solution, whatever it is, right? I tell people this in the events that I'm at all the time is you need to ask about the safety of your data. You need to understand what platform that is built on and what does that mean to your company. You need to understand how will they support you and help you if there was an issue, because whether it's a company like ours or somebody else's, when you look at this Snowflake issue, it wasn't necessarily Snowflake is saying this wasn't my fault. This was your organization's fault. And now you want me to solve it because we were part of what was addressed or accessed here. So important questions. People got to be on top of things.
Mhm.
So
No, and as I said before, I'm not by no means saying any of this is easy, but it
no,
can become easier with the right roadmap. And we certainly spend a lot of time helping people make it easier.
yeah.
It doesn't have to be maybe as hard as overwhelming as it looks when at first glance. So
But platform and security is important, I think, is the takeaway
absolutely.
here, right?
Yep.
Yeah, good.
Yep.
So, Tom, we'll move along a little bit here, and as we move into our sales and M&A segment that we do each week, there's a really solid article here from Industrial Distribution Magazine about understanding what a good retention rate looks like in your industry. We talk about NRR, net revenue retention, and it's as a SaaS software company, that's a major technology and SaaS metric that people look at. But, this just breaks down quite a bit for us, the importance of that in, belly to belly, as Mike Marks calls it, selling out there, right? What we're doing and what are we doing to keep our existing customers, grow our wallet share with our existing customers. So if you get a chance, take a look at that again. It's called Understanding What a Good Retention Rate Looks Like in Your Industry, and from Industrial Distribution Magazine. I thought it was super and they referenced how they do this in the technology world and what we need to be thinking about when we're in the distribution world.
It's pretty funny. Yesterday I just set up with one of our customers, helped them set up a system and this uses our Genius feed to automatically identify customers that are showing potential evidence of going away,
Some
of not,
signals.
yeah, signals of potentially they're at risk,
Mm-hmm.
and then setting up a system so that as quickly as possible the sales team can go and find out if there truly is a risk and what needs to be done to actually retain that customer. And we just did some back of the envelope math, and this isn't the hugest company in the world, but they're decent size. Just some minor improvements are going to have major results to their bottom line and to what they're doing with their sales teams, and even the money that the sales teams are going to be able to make through commissions and otherwise, just by
Yep.
not losing customers along the way.
Yep.
So
Well,
retention is a big deal.
yeah, and this article talks about, customer acquisition is typically what we talk about first. But
Right.
retention, right? Keeping them first and then expanding wallet share, or white space there is important as well. So
But
good
in this
article.
industry, right, and this is what and we talked a lot about is, they've already gone through the effort of doing their credit checks. A
Yeah.
lot of them have good credit lines. A lot of them, right, it's like all that work which you have to do with a new customer, you're not doing here. You already know a little bit of their AR history. You know all of those things. So putting more emphasis on that retention from a profitability standpoint is probably even more important than the acquisition side, or at least as equally
Right.
important.
Yep.
So
Very good. All right. So dropping down into our people and leadership segment, this was something from HRDive.com. Half of workers have considered or taken a quiet vacation. Uh, I had never heard the term before. So had you thought about it or heard that term before?
I'd heard the term.
Yeah.
What was interesting here, it wasn't like people were just like taking off 2 weeks or something, and
No, no.
it's like taking a day off here, a day off there, and not telling obviously, this is probably with remote work, obviously, and not telling their
Yeah.
managers or anybody else that they were actually gone.
Yep.
Um, I think if you're depending upon what you define as a quiet vacation, whether that's a half day, a whole day, or whatever, my guess is those are happening more often even than what's in there, um, especially with remote work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think this is a little different too um, than the idea of I'm leaving for the holiday weekend at noon on Friday and no one
Right,
will know,
right.
versus this it says I'll just got a couple of stats, right? uh they describe it as a secret vacation time without use of paid time off. 14% have lied to their managers about their whereabouts during this time. This is why do workers do it? 26% worked remotely and didn't think it mattered. 20% were overwhelmed and needed a break. 15% didn't want to lose out on pay by officially taking a PTO, and 11% didn't think their managers would notice. Um,
I think
it's
those numbers
astounding.
are like the job market, not the job numbers, they're underestimated.
No, I think you're probably right, but a lot of this is like literally people are, well, I'm doing my work, so it doesn't matter where I am, which and I think this is a big deal, and we'll probably talk about this more over time, because at least for me, as I look at this, especially as our organization is growing, we're just hiring more people, is we did some work before LeadSmart per se, or just as we were kind of starting the work. You and I did some consulting work with an organization, and they had keyboard trackers. They had all the different, I want to call it spyware, employer spyware of productivity, and where your browser was going, and one of the tools took the screenshot of your browser, and all of that stuff. And it's like, that's just not who I want to be in an organization. Nor do I want people to think that's who we are. But at the same time, when you look at the productivity loss to a company that's paying somebody through some of this, it's astounding, right? When it comes together. So, anyways, get your work done, people, and guys like me don't have to worry about if we're monitoring you or not, because I don't like the Big Brother idea.
Yeah.
So, next article here, and we won't spend a lot of time on this, but this was a good article. This is also from HR Dive: How to Train New Leaders in Ethical Decision Making. And I thought this one was important, Tom. And I wish we had more time, but it was great. The time we spent on those other topics with the participation of the audience today was just made me feel really good, and we spent extra time there. But you know, I've spent, you commented on earlier, I've spent 30 plus years of my career in manufacturing and wholesale distribution. And the vast majority of sales leaders, just I'll use as an example, are he sold good, so let's make him the manager, right? He ran his territory well, so let's give him a branch. Um, that's not building leaders. And the beauty of it is the trade associations out there, ASA, Hardy, there's countless of them. I can't mention enough of them. ISA, and the buying groups out there. These guys are all working on, programs for emerging leaders. If you're listening to us today, check in with your buying group, your trade association. If you don't have a formal program for training new leaders, and especially for helping them with ethics and understanding what it means to be a leader. So, any thoughts on that before we jump?
No, I think, there's right. And it's interesting. It kind of goes arm in arm with the previous conversation. The
Yeah.
fact that people are doing secret vacations and all that stuff, it's not so much ethical, but it's all kind of leadership, right? There's some issue with the leadership that would cause that to occur. And I mean, heck, it's hard. Again, it's not an easy thing necessarily to do, but they both go kind of arm in arm.
Yeah. Well, it's a challenge, right, for everybody. It's funny. I read those articles and I'm like, I'm the reverse of that. I think any entrepreneur, or certainly anybody in an executive leadership role, finds themselves sometimes in this. Is that, you're the reverse. Is like, I've said I'm on vacation, but I'm really at work, right?
Yeah.
It's the opposite.
Yeah.
So my wife and I were talking yesterday about Starbucks' new CEO. He lives 20 minutes from us, and he's going to be Starbucks is giving him full use and access to one of the jets, so he can commute from here, Southern California, to Seattle. And Darlene and I were talking about that yesterday, and I said, that guy he's on 24/7 in that role, right? He
Course.
could be in the French Riviera, but he's on
Yeah.
the phone with his lieutenants all day. So, jump into our industry scuttlebutt. Well, before we head out for the day, just some good news for Ferguson. Closed their fiscal year with 10 acquisitions. BSC, an article here from Distribution Strategy Group. BSC Industry acquires Warren Pike. That's two folks in the bearings and power transmission world. And then our friends at DSG, Dakota Supply Group, have brought in a new chief supply chain officer, Dan Klepak. Congrats to Paul Kennedy and your team there. You guys are just, boy, the hiring that they're doing for growth there is phenomenal. So good for our friends there.
I like their new logo too.
Yeah, no, they've rebranded, new website, all kinds of stuff going on. I was text messaging last week with their chief digital officer, and chicken with his head cut off is an understatement for Stefan there. So good. Well, we have a good reads every week. Good example there. Olympic gold medalist Kristen Faulkner. Another example of people embracing the Navy SEAL 40% rule. That's doing the best I can with what I've got going on right now. I think that was kind of cool. So, any thoughts on these things before we jump for the day, Tom? We're kind of behind schedule, like you mentioned.
No, I think we're good there. And then
Great
we have
comments today, huh?
yeah, good comments. Really good conversation, and yeah, hopefully we get more and more companies thinking about transformation as we end the year here.
Yep. Well, we're here to help. Your trade associations are here to help. Buying groups are here to help, and peer network groups are. And we talked about, and I probably focus a lot on, how many people we talk to that aren't doing well, but there's a whole lot of companies that are doing great stuff. And we've met a number of companies recently. We working with, I'll mention these folks that are a new customer of ours at APR Supply in Pennsylvania. They are doing the stuff at APR that we have been talking about today. They've got a digital roadmap. They've just moved from one of the most well-known CRM platforms globally, probably the market leader globally, to our platform, because some things we can do in partnership. But there are people out there that are really, really great stuff. We just need to pull everybody together so everybody's doing it, because it's, rising tide lifts all boats, right? It's never been more valuable than that.
Right. Let's wrap.
That's it. We got another meeting to be to in 15 minutes. We do need to wrap, huh? All right. Well, I'm Kevin Brown. That's my friend Tom Burton. We do this every Friday. If you like what you heard today, whether you're listening on the podcast or you've been with us live today, the favor that you could do for us is hit the subscribe button. If you're listening with us on LinkedIn, the smartest thing you can do to get this every week would be to follow LeadSmart Technologies. You'll see that every week, and you'll get an alert that we're going live. So follow them on LinkedIn. hit the subscribe button if you're on YouTube. And if you're on the podcast formats, please leave a review and hit the subscribe button as well. That doesn't help Tom and I. What that does is it helps the marketplace see that there's another place that they can get information at every week. So thanks for being with us, Tom. Thank you. Appreciate you. Everybody be kind, have fun, be safe, do good things.
Have a good weekend.